a spin through the world you left. It's getting dark, a little too early. Are you missing the dearly bereft? Taking flight, and you could be here tomorrow. Taking flight, well, you could get here tonight.
I'm gonna fly on down for the last stop in this town.
What?
I'm gonna fly on down and fly away.
Well, alright. Taking a spin through the neighborhood, the neighbors scream what you talking about, 'cause I don't know how to let you in, and I can't let you out. What if I was not your only friend in this world? Can you take me where you're going if you're never coming back?
I'm gonna fly on down for the last stop to this town. I'm gonna fly on down and fly away on my way.
Why don't we take a ride away up high through the neighborhood, up over the billboards and the factories and smoke?
I'm gonna fly on down for the last stop in this town.
Yeah, I'm gonna fly on down and fly away on my way. Fly away. Saturday morning, who's gonna play with me? 6 in the morning, baby, I got a long, long day ahead of me. The parents are sleeping soundly, the neighbors are dead as wood. I'm getting up and coming over. We got a rocky neighborhood. Nothing's ever gonna happen here if we don't make it happen. Slip away the day if I want to, but I got something that I do. It's Saturday morning, and this ain't the place for me. I'm giving you warning, baby. We got a whole big fat world to see. Nothing's ever gonna happen here if we don't make it happen.
Hello. Sorry about the wait. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm gonna try something new today. As usual, I had a pretty rough week, so I uh, couldn't think of, and then kind of somewhat forgot to make a question for this week for Schizoid Saturday. But do not worry, I have something in mind. I don't know how interesting or boring or contentious or um, divisive this may be. I don't know. We'll see. Um, Time to get controversial, boys. No, not really. But the other thing I'm doing is, well, when I am doing that's different, I don't usually write notes when I jump on stream. I just kind of ramble, and then I have like a general idea of what it is I want to talk about, right? Which I think generally is fine. It's fine for some people. Some people really don't like it. So then I was like, okay, like what kind of compromise? Hey, Gator Dog, what kind of compromise can I make as to my natural intuitive approach, which is be a rambling man, and something that's a little more coherent, maybe, or something that I can bring up specific points, and then people in chat can be like, "Oh, I disagree with that," or "That makes sense," right? It's a little less stream of consciousness, but it's kind of still. The only thing is, it's like a, it's like almost like a, I don't know if you've ever done like extemporaneous speaking presentations or whatever. It usually means that like it's like partially um um it's mostly honestly improvised, but you have like notes, right? So you might have some flashcards that have like a sentence or less to remind you, oh, this is the thing I talk about next, this is the thing I talk about next, right? Or these are the different things, right? So I'm going to try that. All right. Maybe it's going to be a successful experiment. Maybe not. We will find out today. Okay. If the music is too loud, I feel like I got it lowered a tad bit. I'm listening to some Decalius, I think it's pronounced. Yeah, it's an incredibly good what is it? Depressive, suicidal black metal band. But it's like a little more chill. It's pretty nice. Yeah, key points, exactly. All right. So, as far as myself today, really quick, just to get out of the way, today I went to the Aquarium of the Pacific and with the fam. But that place gives me a little bit of agoraphobia and stuff, so I had to pop up Propellant Wall, get through it. But I'm still taking all the other stuff like the Vyvanse, and Vyvanse seems to be working okay, and the other stuff's just working as usual. So it's keeping me awake at work, which is pretty nice. I love Decalius. Hell yeah. Yeah, they're really good. They're really good. I forgot the name of it, by the way, Benadryl. But there was like this band I found that it was funny because like it was still DSBM, but it had like a more upbeat like sound for like it had more like of a rock sound, but it was still like. And the other day, I actually found a pretty cool Hatsune Miku, Hatsune Miku, DSBM song that was like pretty cool. Zoom Zoom, what's Zoom Zoom? Okay, anyway, all right, so I'm just gonna get started. The reason I think this one might be like a little bit like, might get some pushback on this one, and so on and so forth, but I still think it's something really important to talk about. Some of you, maybe when I bring it up, obviously I don't know, right? I don't know what your experience is or whatever, but personally, if you're a schizoid, or, have long believed to be as such, but haven't bothered to get a diagnosis, still recommend trying. Some of this stuff might be like, oh, like it might be like, I don't know. I'm not saying it would be triggering or whatever, but it might be, like, I don't know. Maybe some people won't like what I say. And some people might feel like, I don't know, like called out or something, right? Because, it might apply to them in some way when I talk about. But I was sitting down like for a nice, like, I don't know, good like 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, schizoid cope, right? What is schizoid cope? Now, and I'm not. One can argue that developing schizoid traits and then developing the personality disorder, and many of its things, could be like a form of like it's a defense, right? It's a adaptation, to basically keep your brain from self-destructing. It's your brain's way of dealing with shit, which in general with schizoids, it's more of a disassociative type of condition, right? And for some, it's like derealization on top of that, but it is more or less a disassociative from your emotions, sense of self, sometimes from like depersonalization sometimes gets involved with some people. It's just a lot of your brain basically disconnecting from parts of yourself, the external world, other people, and all kinds of stuff. And ultimately, it generally leads to a certain level of seclusion and isolation, like intentional isolation. Like you're making a conscious choice to stay away from most people. Or if you can't stay away from people because you need to survive, you mask in order to get through the day, in order to later spend your free time, staying away from people. Okay, so I'll get into it. And like I said, these things I'm gonna list. These are specific to schizoids, in my opinion. So, that's another important thing. This isn't declarative. I'm not saying this is the holy truth of the Schizoid Bible or something. This is what I've kind of thought about quite a bit over the last few years of doing this kind of reading and talks and talking to various Zoids and so on and so forth. Okay? And some of these might have applied to me in the past. So, and maybe some aspects of it sometimes still do when I'm in really dire straits or something. But, all right. I'll start with the first one. I think this one's like really common. All of these are pretty common. I've seen them in a lot of people. But anyway, okay. So these are ways that schizoids, I believe schizoids cope or deal with, or coping mechanisms of some kind, to sort of fill a few of those holes, right? Those holes you feel, of like, feeling like a person, feeling like you could form interpersonal connections, feeling like you aren't just some alien or some kind of like malfunctioning brain, or that whatever the feelings are that make you feel like why am I here? Like, what is the point? Why am I here? I can't get the pleasure from things that other people seem to at the same levels. Sometimes, in some cases, negative emotions are a lot easier to actually tap into than any kind of positive ones. Let's see here. Hi, Angst, under another channel name. I believe your first sub and commenter. Was diagnosed Zoid first, PDA autism second, likely ADHD, have dissociative amnesia from abuse. That's what's interesting, Ryan. I personally do not separate, and this is just my armchair, I do not separate schizoid from, not separate. I don't think being schizoid and being autistic are mutually exclusive. For some reason, the psychological community seems to keep doing that, and I think it is doing a ton of damage. In fact, I think there's a higher likelihood that someone that is schizoid is not necessarily autistic, but there is probably going to be a higher likelihood of some kind of autism, as well as on the other side of things, which would be the more schizotypal, sometimes schizophrenic, but more like schizotypal, schizo sort of thinking. Usually, in general, this is my experience after years of talking to Zoids. They usually have a lot of one of those, or some mix. ADHD is pretty common too. A variety of things, but yeah, you can be an autistic schizoid. That is absurd in my mind. One's a personality disorder, one's a neurological difference, cognitive difference. almost implies that autistic people can't develop personality disorders, which is bullshit. Okay. Number 1. Philosophical erasing of others through religious/philosophical forms of thought that negate the importance, value, what have you, of others or relationships or even emotions. Right? That's it's not just crossover; they can be together. That's my point. That's why there's so much crossover, because of that. I've seen this as like a pretty normal kind of way of dealing with, like, what am I doing here? What are people to me? I can't connect to people. I'm staying away from people. Their behavior doesn't make sense to me, right? That kind of stuff. I've seen so many Zoids basically use, like, either things like Buddhism, maybe they got really into stuff like, geez, man, I'm so bad at remembering this. I'm bad with names. Schopenhauer. They took Nietzsche stuff a certain way. They took, like, maybe they just went like, oh, well, they just became like focused on something. And this is just one form of, like, the copes that I'm talking about. Okay, this isn't like all of the. We all do this, right? That's stupid. But I'm talking about, like, ones I've commonly seen, right? So it will be stuff like that. They'll have these spiritual views, or philosophical. It doesn't have to be necessarily spiritual. That basically, like, negates the need for any kind of relationship or connection by basically making those things some kind of, like, lesser thing, like lesser wave, lesser thought, lesser state of mind, lesser, right? Like that it's some kind of, like, base thing that humans should ascend or enlighten beyond, and that kind of stuff, right? Or move past for whatever reason, right? I've seen that kind of, like, cope of, like, oh, like, oh, well, this stuff that all these people do, and there is kind of like a void there, a sadness there, even if it's hard to even feel most of the time. There's an emptiness, a feeling of emptiness. It is not an emptiness; it is a feeling of emptiness. Always remember that. And so it gets like, this is just one of the ways that you try to deal with it. It's usually more of like an existential, either anxiety, depression, or something of that nature that I'm talking about, that a lot of schizoids cope with the stuff I'm going to be talking about. So that's one, right? Philosophical, spiritual. Buddhism is really common, I would say. Buddhism is, like, pretty common way to basically, like, the idea of separating yourself from, like, want or need or ego, right? Like that. That's an easy way to manage what feels like your life already, your existence for many schizoids already. It's a system, it's an idea that's pretty easy to slide into. But in my belief, like I said, using those things in order to deal with what is going on with you is, in my opinion, it's entrenching you more into being able to supersede any of it, right? To overcome any of it. Because now you have, like, a really good reason for why you shouldn't attempt a bunch of things that you're likely not going to attempt, right? But now you don't feel so, like, existentially bad about it, because now you have, like, this answer, right? That's my opinion. If you have it, good for you. Like I said, some of these are going to be like, I don't know. I feel like some of these are going to upset some people. And that's funny to say, because, like, the people that would get upset are schizoids, and they're usually not all that upset about a lot of things somebody would say, right? Usually they're upset about, like, the state of something in the environment, the world around them, how people are, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think they usually get, like, mad because one person said something. So we'll see. I've seen Zoids get mad. I've seen them. It's not like we're not robots. Remember, we're not robots. We're very muted. Sometimes we have moments of kind of an alexithymic experience. Sometimes we get overwhelmed with a flood of shit, and then we don't know how to manage it. Sometimes, blah, blah, blah. right? Okay. Anyway, next one. Let me see if anybody's jumped. By the way, if anybody wants to jump on and talk about any of these while I'm sort of going on here, you're more than welcome to. I'm in the Ants live stream. I can undeafen myself when I feel like it's time to talk or whatever, and I'll keep an eye on it to see if anybody else jumps in. Okay. What's the 7-layer burritos? Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of layer burritos with schizoid cope. It's about as complicated as all the stuff they generally like to get into, or as nuanced as a lot of their thinking about other things. They'll do it for this too. Okay, here's the next one. Attachment to systems that make sense or that they are able to navigate as they are clinging to make sense of a world, the world of the interpersonal through mechanical systems about human behavior, so behavior, genetics, neurological sciences, chemical, olfactory, taste type stuff, pheromones, whatever, evolutionary ideas about how like man, primate, and view their understanding of this as the reasons it's better to not take part in it. Right. So I've seen this a few times. So it's like, they're like, they'll study like human behavior and stuff, and they'll look at it through this kind of more STEMmy lens, and maybe some anthropology, that kind of stuff. Maybe I'm not saying, like I said, this is like a one of the coping mechanisms I've seen for schizoids dealing with this like emptiness type shit. And so they'll like think of like human or interpersonal interactions as something that are just like, oh well, it's just monkey shit, or oh look, it obviously there is no such thing as love, it's all just chemical, it's all just this. And then they look into it and they're like, see, or it's all just neurological, or you don't have free will because look at this study. And look, some people don't believe in free will, that's fine, and it's okay to not believe in free will, but it gets weird when you're like, well, so nothing matters, and so I should just like live out my life and die. And so then like because I believe, based on the science that we currently have possession, there is no free will, and so then any interpersonal connections are irrelevant and pointless, and so on and so forth, right? So they'll often use like STEM, and it's all real shit. It's not like it's not true. Some of them are still developing theories, right? There's still research that has to be done, but they might latch on to STEMmy sort of reasons for why they don't want to participate in engaging with other human beings, or why it's pointless, or why they're disgusted by it, or so on and so forth, right? So that's a good way to sort of be like, oh, I'm doing the right thing, right? In some cases, for some, I've seen like it kind of develops into like a sort of it can enter into like almost an antinatalism and other stuff mixed in with like philosophical ideas, right? So it's like, oh well, if humans should not reproduce, then why should I be happy about the fact that someone made me? It's all bad and it's all suffering, and I'm just an animal, and then it gets connected to like all these other aspects, right? So it's like I've seen it like so many times. So that's one road. That's another road. All right. If you guys want to discuss any of the roads that I'm talking about here, not to disparage it, because I had done some of this stuff myself, but like schizoid sort of copium, and I don't invalidate it because it's a pretty rough existence. Being schizoid is a rough existence. So if you use some of this stuff to deal with it, fine. Like I don't blame you. Like, what the fuck, right? It's rough. My position is it doesn't have to be as rough as it seems to be perceived as by schizoids themselves, and even by the psychological community. There's a lot of things missing, in my opinion. I'm armchair. I'm not a psychologist. I am just some loser on the fucking internet. Take my shit with a grain of salt. Anyway, next one. Attachment to cultural systems. So it's similar to what I was saying about STEM subjects, but then it gets attached to things more like sociology, socioeconomic stuff, gender dynamics, history, political, like all this, like all these things about like what human societies do and how they function and how they like rise and collapse and all this like bad stuff that humans do as like a species throughout history, and like blah blah blah. And so they'll like essentially it'll turn into like this thing of like, oh, like it's all just really cynical, right? It's all just all cynical. It's just a bunch of like cynicism in the world, and everyone's just like looking out for themselves, and it's disgusting, and it's like, it's like all these kind of like really negative perspectives about honestly a lot of very negative stuff that human beings have done to each other for various cultural reasons and tribalism and things like that, right? So it's like, oh, why do I want to be a part of somebody else? That's just like one more step toward having a tribe and doing the horrible sort of behaviors that we do when we build something like a community. Eventually it turns tyrannical. So yeah, so it'll be kind of like I said, for those that aren't as STEMmy and they're more into what they call like soft sciences or whatever, when it comes to like human beings and what they do and how or they'll look at like things like AI technology, running rampant in certain ways and blah blah blah. Things like, oh, look how humans behave. It can mix too. So it could be like, look how humans behave and how selfish they are, and it's just pointless. And now they don't even care about STEM stuff and climate change. And so it's like, oh, we're all fucked anyway. And right. When you believe that, it makes it really easy, or well, it doesn't make it really easy because it's still there. It makes it easier to just like push away or push aside like whatever discomfort, existential discomfort that you're getting from like feeling like you can't do this thing, right? You cannot connect to people, you cannot make a friend, because friend is like that's another one, right? It's like friends are bad because this is what friends are, and all it is this and this and that. It's like, okay, and relationships of any kind are bad. They just lead to like either like destruction or this or that, or it's all a lie, it's all an illusion, and everyone else is blind, that kind of stuff, right? Let me see here. MTN said, I agree. I've been thinking that Buddhism is like expecting an avatar in a video game to start understanding how the simulation is made. But no, if there is a simulation, you were created to act. Nice. Actually, like that quite a bit. Yeah. I really have issues with making friends. I mean, that's the thing about Schizoid, right? It's not just that they have trouble making friends. They have trouble understanding why they would want to make friends to begin with, right? That's the major difference. Somebody that's avoidant really wants friends, but they have either dismissive or anxious style of attachment that makes it like very, very difficult for that to happen. Schizoids are very different in that like they don't want to have friends or don't understand why they would need to have friends because of a lot of other like negative or confusing assumptions about what all that means, and so they're better off without all that, right? Because people do this and people care about this and they act like this, and ultimately it's just a big or even if it like they like me, it just turns into like they like me and want to be around me, but I'm not really getting much out of being around them, like emotionally. You're probably not getting much emotionally in general. Like, it's kind of, like I said, usually pretty stunted. And so then, yeah. Very, 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 very fucking different. If you haven't read it, good reads like, Daniel Winark's work on the avoidant schizoid difference. I can't remember the paper right now. Good one. Greenberg talks about it. There's a variety of stuff out there where you can be like, oh, like, so I've seen a lot of avoidant people go like, am I schizoid? Am I avoidant? Am I schizoid? Am I avoidant? What is this? What is this? What is that? Right? Look up papers that discuss the differences. Fundamentally, one is more focused on rejection sensitivity. The other one is not. Schizoid is not really a rejection sensitivity condition, in my opinion. Just based on what I understand, Look, I'm feeling like I've been doing this for a little bit, so I am starting to, like, the imposter syndrome's gone. I am starting to feel a lot more confident about what I'm saying. Sorry, I know that's disgusting. And also, like, technically speaking, even if only like, let's just say, just a low ball it. Let's just say that only like 35%, 30% of people that I've talked to, that, say they're schizoid, right? Or believe it, and we had like long conversations with her. Like, let's just say only like 30%, are actually schizoid, right? I think it's higher. Because as I always mention it, as Eleanor Greenberg herself says, schizoids tend to be incredibly good at diagnosing themselves. The nature of the fear at the heart of schizoids is being able to be understood, like, and someone else not consuming you with their understanding of what you are, engulfing you, eating you, because they fundamentally do not or cannot, in many ways, understand how different you are as a person internally, and how what your relationship is with the external world and relationships in general. And I think that's where a lot of the neurodivergence comes in. Right? This is a problem a lot of autistic people deal with, right? But not all autistic people become schizoid. Not all schizo people like myself become schizoid. It's based on my understanding, it's very, very sensitive babies, very sensitive children. They have certain types of sensitivities, and they have certain ways of dealing with it. And one of those major ways are kind of disassociative styles of protecting the noggin. Not so much being understood, but of seemingly being a different breed of human. Yeah, it's like, right, yeah, there's a lot. It's a mix. Especially when you're younger, there could be shame of like, why am I not? Why can't, like, you see people doing things and you're like, why am I bothered by the things that everyone seems to be doing that they enjoy? Like, why do I see it and go like, no, right? And so then you think like, okay, is there something wrong with my brain that, like, I'm not doing what the other humans can do about or enjoy, right? So you gotta deal with that. At some point, you might just kind of go with like, oh, it is what it is. I can't do anything about it, and you move on. And but still that emptiness, that weirdness, that alienation is just always there. And it gets, in my opinion, again, it gets worse as you get older. And eventually you plateau, and then like it's just bad. But like, I guess maybe at some point you got used to it or something when you're like a lot older. But yeah, if you're in your 20s and it doesn't feel so good right now, it's my belief that it's going to feel even worse at 30 and then 40 unless something is done about it. Okay. Basically, for me, is like when I was in my 20s, I was able to use a lot of these kind of coping mechanisms or styles of that I see commonly to kind of manage it and deal with it, and just like oftentimes I put myself above it, and I have many excuses and many reasons, mixed with like a more misanthropic perspective on people and stuff. And so, but as I got older, the discomfort and that hollowness became more and more pervasive, and I started like, yeah, a lot of soul searching and a lot of reading to, nowadays I hate reading. I mean, I love books, but I hate reading because my brain does the ADHD thing where I have a lot of trouble. Like, I can read like a chapter and I have to take a break, take a break. I hate it. That's why I like audiobooks now, because then I could just play in the background while I'm grinding on a fucking stupid video game. Right? I could be playing a roguelike and listening to, like, I don't know, whatever. Like somebody's dissertation or something. Okay. So, next one. It's warm today. What the fuck? Yeah, weather's starting to change now. Okay. Studies psychology to understand normal people come to the conclusion that they have some kind of non-available part that normal human has in their thinking because of trauma that shaped their brain from infancy to adulthood, right? So that kind of like falls in line with like a lot of the way some people approach like empty core stuff and things like that. Like there's this idea that like the schizoid never developed a sense of self of any kind. I don't personally believe that at all. I think they develop a sense of self during childhood, up to sometimes adolescence. And it was a sense of self that was essentially just beaten down by living in a world that was just too much for your kind of neurodivergent brain. It was just too fucking much. Things began to progressively make less and less sense about human relationships and a lot about what your species does, because it just wasn't vibing. And with that sensitivity of being forced to engage and forced to do things that were just unintuitive to you, it just became too invasive, too overwhelming, too engulfing. And that's why so many schizoids that I talk about, when they talk about like if I say, what are your memories of yourself when you were a child, right? Like, what do you remember? Like, because it's wild. Like my wife, for example, right? She can look at, if I ask her like some story about when she was 6 or 7 or 5, even, she has like stories, she has recollections, and she can tell me about them, right? You ask me, and I'm like, I remember playing Mega Man, or I remember reading this issue of Spider-Man. I remember stuff I looked at and then internalized, that came from media and stuff. Anything that was like actual happenings, like with people, they're mostly like trauma. So, like I don't really think about like, if I say, oh, I remember this time I went to Disneyland with my family, and it's like, oh, what did you guys do there? What did you talk about? How was it? How did you feel? I have no idea. But if you ask me, oh, do you remember like what ride you liked there the best or found the most interesting? And I could probably recollect that. I could probably be like, yeah, Star Tours was really neat, because at the time I really liked Star Wars, and there was all this stuff, and it was really cool, and then I could like engage with it and like pretend like I'm in Star Wars or whatever when I was a kid, and that was way more interesting and cool to me than like being at Disneyland with my family and looking at Mickey Mouse, and a guy in a fucking suit. I knew that shit. Like, I never. Let's just say Santa Claus left the building very, very early on in my childhood, and no one had to tell me. You're telling me people remember their childhoods? Yeah. Like I said, my wife, like, she has all these like memories, and she doesn't just remember what happened, right? She remembers how she felt, and she could still get emotional in a positive or negative way, or laugh or something. I can't do that, right? I'm starting to be able to do that, like develop things, and I'm starting to connect my emotions and stuff to my past. Again, since a lot of it wasn't so great in certain ways, it's kind of made me like more depressed. But hey, it's part of the process. But in any case, one of the cope that I've seen schizoids use is that it's like, oh, well, according to the literature, a bunch of shit happened to me, and I never developed the sense of self, so it never existed. I'm an empty husk, and I already went through all the stages of like growth that I was like, I missed them all, or I missed a bunch of them. I got some, and there's some that I missed along the way because of this or that, and so now those are gone, and they're gone forever, and I just have to learn how to cope or deal with that. It's like, no, my opinion. If I make it sound declarative, always caveat, my opinion. I think there is definitely a child in there that has a lot of feelings, a lot of fears, a lot of confusion, a lot of joys. But it's been extremely locked away, buried by your brain. What else, right? Shit ain't magic. Because the issue is that positive feelings, emotions in general, if you're that sensitive as a child, are just fucking overwhelming. I was a sensitive fucking kid. I do have some memories of fears and like, but they seem like distant, and I'm starting to like attach to them now. Like I always said, I was a kid that like went to sleep at night terrified that things were gonna take me from my window, and that things can come out of the shadows. And remember, I was like more schizoid, or that like all kinds of stuff, and it had like behavioral and physiological problems that caused me, like I was like a bedwetter until like I was like, I don't know, I think it was like 7 or 8. I was still wet in the fucking bed. Like I was having night terrors and shit about like the stuff in my head, about like what could be this and what could be that, and what is the world, what is happening, and why is you know, and my parents are Catholics, so it's like, why is there like this weird guy that like supposedly is looking at me? Can he read my mind? Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, you know? It's like a fucking kid. And thoughts like that, and I guess it turned into like, you know, because like if you know this about bedwetting, especially if a kid does it a lot, and as they get older, they still have these issues, and there's no physiological reason for it, like they don't have like a bad shitty bladder or something, it's usually associated to like high anxiety, trauma, and shit like that. There are conditions that could cause that, but that's a general understanding. Like most kids, like kids wet the bed sometimes, yeah, that's fine. But if kids just wet in the bed like so bad, and in my case it was so bad that it was almost every other night, and I had to, my parents had to like put a fucking like older kid diaper on me or I would put it on when I was like 5 or 6. I'd have to like still wear one because I would just to bed, not to during the day. Obviously, I can use the bathroom just fine, but I would wear it when I was a kid because I would piss myself. And you know, how many times can you clean and wash and change the sheets every goddamn time? You had a closet demon, swear to God it was real, as a child, like 9 or 10. There you go. I remember being put into a timeout when I was like 5 or so. I was shaking from fear. Never made a peep in school again until around high school. So yeah, definitely feel the sensitive child things, right? Thank God I killed God by realizing it's really probably a Pentecostal superstition by people trying to stop doing what they want, stop you from doing what they want you to do. That's pretty funny. Missed the social onboarding indoctrination experience. Maybe the NPC just died. Is it still there, blocked, or just deleted? Yeah, but I think like all those needs that you had as a child, all those dreams, all those things that made you smile and cry, I think they're all like still there. They don't disappear. They don't. You can't actually delete them unless like, you know, you got brain surgery or something. It's locked away in there. It's still there. Gator, I had the same thing. I can remember 5 or 6 getting the feeling that there was something evil in my sister's closet. I didn't want it to overwhelm me, so I stood at the doorway at the top. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, okay, look, they say every kid's had a boogeyman under their bed, right? But the problem is this. Look, you want to know what one of the main problems when you're a sensitive kid and neurodivergent sensitive kid, you have your own like sort of view of what the boogeyman is or could be. And because you're so afraid, if you try to tell your parents, usually they're going to give you either solutions, answers, or dismissal in worst cases, that won't make sense to you, won't help you, and you're still afraid. You're still afraid. Hold on, I gotta turn on this fan. I don't know why it's so fucking warm today. I guess spring has started or something. Give me one quick second. Good help. Okay. I'm not done with the copium list, don't worry. How would you describe your core self? Like me? Oh yeah, I've only been discovering like that shit like in the last like 2 years or 3 years, like 3 years. But now like I'm super aware. Dude, I fucking hate because I'm sweating and then it looks like I have a fucking comb everywhere and it drives me nuts. I saw a tall shadow in my 20s, ran and attacked it. Only way was through it. Hat Man without his hat, demonic. You know what's really cool about that, Ryan? And I'm gonna answer your question, Benadryl. I still have that dream, and I've had that dream at some point when I started getting like more angry and bitter about the world. I started like fighting my nightmares. So now, it's more like a I'm less afraid. But like whenever I have a dream about like a shadowy figure that's like following me, or like in the hallway, or I know there's like a dark hallway and I know there's something in there that's dangerous, that's violent, that's evil, like in my dream. I think as a child I used to run. But now, like, I get pissed. I get so fucking mad when I have that dream. Like, I get fucking furious. And I charge straight into it. Like, ready to fucking strangle whatever it is. Like, I'm just like, oh, you're the fucking monster? You want to see a fucking monster? And then I just like, yeah. Like, that's kind of like how I handle that dream now. It's not like a fucking, I'm not like aware really most of the time with those. It's just that's how that recurring dream goes. I'm like in a house, and I'm like, it's almost like floating, and it's like a weird old home, and like there's just like this immense negative, violent kind of aura, and I know there's something watching me in the room or something in the dream, and like I'm looking for it, and I'm pissed, and then like when I find it, I'm like, fucking, I'm gonna shred you. Yeah, I stare that monster down, but from a safe distance. No, not me, not anymore. I get fucking mad. I wake up mad from when I have that recurring dream. It's only once in a while, but I wake up, and when I do wake up, like, my wife's seen it too. Like, I'll wake up from it just like fucking swinging, dude. Like, I'll just be like, I'll wake up like that, and I'll be like, whoa, and I'll feel mad. I was like, that dream again. Fuck. Like, heart's beating. Fucking, I'm still like adrenaline starts going through me. Like, it sucks. Stare long enough, you'll create it. Nah, fuck that. Don't stare at it. Just fucking strangle that shit. Anyway, okay. Oh, let me undeafen myself. Hey, Shadow. See you're here.
Morning.
Yeah, let me see if you're not too loud or whatever. Yeah, morning. It's not really. By the way, for the audience, they just say good morning. It's not actually morning, because then people are like,
somewhere.
They're gonna think I'm saying good morning because yeah, of course. No, it's very much nighttime right now for me. And
it is for me too.
Yeah, that's what's funny. Let's see here.
I had some beef with some of the things you were talking about. Well, not necessarily beef, but like some really important things I wanted to say earlier. And now we're like on 72nd door down from where we were.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I didn't like, you know.
No, it's fine. I didn't know if.
Okay, yeah, sure. I got like one more major point, but
then go on and do that.
Do that, and then we'll go back. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I just don't want to lose track of where I was going so far.
Yeah, there's plenty I want to talk about here, though.
Cool. We'll save the last 20 minutes or so. So I usually do like an hour and a half or just so, and for that. Okay. So number 5, schizoid copium, in my opinion, armchair, is well, it's not really. It's a culminating aspect. This isn't like another one. There are more probably. I just didn't think of them now that I've seen. One actually that I didn't write down is the whole like trying to embrace this idea that like, oh, I am evil, I am cursed, I am this. Like a lot of schizoids, from what I've heard, have gone through, and I went through it. They've gone through this like phase at some point in their life, usually maybe 20s or something, where they thought like, oh, like, am I just a psychopath? I must be a psychopath. I'm a psychopath, right? And so they started thinking, I just got to embrace it. I have to just accept that I'm a psychopath. And that's why I can't connect to people. And that's why I don't like get as negatively emotionally affected by seeing something or reading something horrible that happened. And why I just feel like, oh, you know, or I'm just kind of like, you know, and so they'll start thinking that kind of shit. And that's one kind of way. Usually they grow out of that at some point, hopefully, because like a schizoid that isn't in fact a psychopath, if they start trying to like engage with things like even on the internet or read things, or they'll start like even their like more physiological disgust mechanisms will start kicking in. That's what happened to me when I was like looking at a lot of gore vids, in my 20s, right? I just felt like, fuck it, I guess I'm like, I don't feel shit, so I might as well watch fucked up gore vids. Like, fuck it, I guess it's kind of interesting. And so like I watched like a bunch, and yeah, like my body just started like having problems. I started feeling like anxious and shaky, but I didn't like, the emotions weren't like quite, I didn't understand. I was just like, why does my body feel like, why do I feel afraid and fucked up and nauseous and strange? Like I didn't get sad about seeing that. It was just, it was fucked up. But like, you know, like it is what it is, right? Like people die. Like, why does it bother me that I saw that? Like, but my body was telling me like, this is bothering you. So yeah. Anyway, let me see here. This is the kind of culminating thing. Any of the above that I've mentioned so far, if you just got here and you find this conversation interesting, rewind, watch it later. It'll be a VOD. Anyway, any of the above can often be used in some attempt to relieve, negate, or destroy, and I put parentheses, doomer, any prospects toward change in themselves or their environment by blaming the world, death, the climate, the philosophical nihilism, hold on, my daughter's here, I'll finish reading it though, or a disgust with the animal that is being human and all its trappings. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. There we go. Yeah, my daughter always comes in around, well, on Saturdays it'll be like at 8, most weekdays. So anyway, she'll always come in during my stream. I don't care. It's great. I need her. Good night. Okay, so let me get back to what I had up here. Okay, yeah. This is it. I thought I was Hannibal, but turns out I'm actually Will Graham. Well, that shows it's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good show. Movies were fine too. But anyway, so the idea is that like all these things, right, will oftentimes turn a lot of schizoids into this kind of like doomer, or not necessarily a doomer, but like apathy, resignation. The world is horrible. I can't do anything about it. Why engage in it? Everything's terrible. And or it might turn into something more negative, like misanthropy, actively like developing some kind of like hatred toward their fellow man. But even then, like it's more like the hate's coming from like, it's not coming from a lack of cognitive empathy, right? It's like you're mad at the world for existing at all. And so yeah, like all these things I listed already and talked about, there'll be some kind of culmination of it, whether it was pieces of these different things that I mentioned, other things that I missed, and then they'll create like a worldview that makes them apart from the world in a significant way, right? So, like I said, it's either that turns into like a form of negating like their connection to it. Hey, Libby. Negating their connection to it via these beliefs, destroying, right? So it is like the bad object, essentially, the world, or just relieving and then just going, well, just relieving, finding some kind of resignation and accepting, like, oh, well, like, you know, nothing really matters. I'm just going to chug through life. I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm not going to get sad. I just got to accept it. And then eventually I'm going to die just like everybody else. And, you know, just, you know. And I'm not making fun of it because I've done plenty of that kind of shit in my younger years. Let's see here. MTN. Yeah, that's true. Maybe the problem is within our minds, but there are many intelligent nihilists and philosophical pessimists who make good observations. No. I am a nihilist, by the way. I am a productive nihilist, I call myself. Optimistic nihilist is another word. No, I am a nihilist, yes. And I am definitely a pessimist. I've come to the point where I just don't care about how I feel about things, because how I feel about things isn't reality. Um, it's a portion of how I view it. So my hope is that I keep chugging along anyway. My pessimist, and I will be proven incorrectly about my pessimism because why not? Give it a shot. And as far as nihilism go, mine is just mostly existential. Aren't labels dangerous? It depends on what you do with them. Like guns are
I
dangerous,
mean, are tools dangerous?
holes are
It
dangerous,
depends.
cars are dangerous. A lot of things are dangerous. Um, yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Shadow. So what did you want to bring up?
Okay. I don't know. I kind of came in here late because I saw you added, and then I forgot you were streaming.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you touched on this on one of
sure.
your
Yeah, maybe.
copes, but one of the copes I've seen, and this is the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because the earlier conversation of the reasoning behind the fear of
Sorry,
the
I'm so
schizoid, right?
pause really quick.
Building a foundation.
Hold on,
Sorry.
can you pause really quick? I forgot.
Mhm.
I never answered Benadryl Angel's question, and I said I would really quick. Um, so the core self thing. Okay, so you asked me like, what's my core self? It's gonna sound stupid, but basically I discovered that even as a child, I was somebody that was always interested in fighting for something that I thought was good in the face of a world that felt really scary and crazy and pointless, right? And my childhood hero for years was Spider-Man, and essentially it was that dynamic of everyone hates him. They say he's a criminal, he's a bad person, right? But you know that he's not because you're reading through his perspective often, and you know he's being motivated by like these kind of philosophically noble intentions. But the world sees him as a vigilante, as a bad guy, all kinds of stuff, right? And his life is often shit too. Like his personal relationships suffer significantly, right? He could just and there's a couple times he would throw in the towel because of all the shit being so overwhelming, but he would always go back because he would realize like I'm just an individual, I am suffering, but I am more than just myself. I am a part of something, and that is like people, and I am people, no matter how much um, I would like to individualize myself in my mind or something. So that kind of like shit really resonated with me. Not like at that level. That's obviously I wasn't thinking about it like that complicated a way, but that really like vibed with me as a kid because I felt so out of place and I felt kind of bitter and confused and scared. And Spider-Man, everyone was after him, and Spider-Man was being treated badly, but he still said, "Fuck you! I'm gonna do the stuff. I'm gonna do the good thing." And so I've discovered more about myself, the internal child core self, and that self is somebody that cares about helping people. And it took me like a very long time to accept that because it sounded so cringe and disgusting in my mind. But yeah, and it's funny. I look back at my history and some of the actions I've taken that at the time felt kind of seemingly sort of empty or blasé. And yeah, there's a lot of evidence that I kind of did. Like I did stuff like volunteer at nursing homes, and I did stuff like things that somebody would consider like good to do. But when I did them, I thought, oh, this will be an interesting experience. I thought, oh, there's something to learn here, right? And so there's so many avenues in which you can learn things. Why was I choosing avenues in which it also involved helping people, right? And so yeah. And so like I think back at it, there were moments that I now can feel fond of that previously felt just kind of like, why do I remember this? Like, why do I have this memory of this thing? Why does it matter to me? And I was kind of intellectualized a lot of that. So that's who I am. I am a person that likes helping others because I think the world is really scary and unfortunate, and I want to, I guess, be Spider-Man. It's really stupid. Anyway, go ahead, Shadow.
So one of the this is completely pivoting off of what you said, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
One of the copes I find that I have a problem with when it comes to schizoid
Yeah.
stuff is people that over intellectualize and let the horse get away from the cart, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there's very often a problem with people that over intellectualize all these different problems to their main issue. How do I word this?
I don't know. You're the one
It's
saying
like
it.
how whatever. someone will present a problem of philosophical origins and extrapolate it to trying to find universal answers when the source of the reason, like the source of their motivation,
Mhm.
stems from a childhood experience of feeling like they can't connect to their family.
Yeah.
So I don't like whenever I hear people have philosophical discussions with the intent to solve problems that originated in their childhood,
Yeah.
because again, I think that's putting the horse before the cart,
Yeah.
or the cart before the horse. Or no, it's
Yeah,
the
it
horse
doesn't
getting away
matter.
from the
It
cart.
hurt.
Yeah,
It is, I think, is
that's
the
my
cart
metaphor.
before the horse before the cart. Yeah, because you need to put the cart and
Yeah,
then the horse in front of it so that the
that's,
horse can pull
thank
it.
you. That
Yeah.
would be the correct metaphor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on that, I don't think the fear of a schizoid is necessarily that they're so misunderstood by others, because I think that's still, you like distill it further, right? Keep going.
Yeah.
I think the problem comes from when the schizoid originally in their childhood, something about their upbringing and their own proclivity, their natural tendency, makes them say, I shouldn't connect with these people around me.
Mhm.
Either they feel dangerous, either I am unable to connect, and I'm not so sure about the neglect part as like a major influence, but that's besides my point. There is a very obvious, the schizoid chooses independence or chooses to cultivate independence.
Mhm.
So when you have these memories, like the problem with people that don't remember their childhood is also because of emotional trauma, but in the schizoid's case, the problem isn't that it is exclusively neurodivergent and that they only would have memories from things they emotionally connect with,
Mhm.
but rather that they are refusing emotional connection with things they could connect. Does that,
Or
do you understand what I'm getting at?
have connected to
Well,
when we're a child. Yeah.
my point with that is that if you ask someone who's neurodivergent the things that matter to them, you'll get a lot of different things than
Of
someone
course.
who's neurotypical,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
So when you get to the schizoid's childhood memories, when you ask them, "Oh, I remember this and I remember that," it sounds like a neurodivergence focus,
Mhm.
right? Because it's very personalized, it's very interest based. But I think that's a red herring, because
Okay.
I think that's actually indicative of a child that's not connecting emotionally to other people interpersonally.
Oh, well,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
all
I
that's
see. I think I
left
see what
are
you're
things
saying.
that look
Okay. Yeah.
neurodivergent.
No. Okay. Well, let me. May I push back on that a bit?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I agree to a certain point, but as you well know, even someone that's like, this is the easiest example. Even somebody that's autistic, right? That is an adult that still can have that can develop interpersonal connections, even if they're kind of more anxious. Um, they still have very strong emotional connections to things, oftentimes more than the people attached to them. Like that's still something that that's still,
Why?
well, it's not because I mean, it's not necessarily because they're traumatized, right? It because there's just I mean, if you look into like just studies when it comes to like autism in general, especially when you're talking about like high functioning or whatever they call it now, um, there's still like this, like you're still drawn, you still have these special interests that are like very emotional, very important to that person, even if they don't make sense to like a neurotypical person as to why you would invest so much emotion into that instead of like, conventional forms of interpersonal relationship. Um, so but this is what's funny too, right? Like one of the common ways that have been spoken about that autistic people will show like affection for somebody, like to show I care about you. As I brought it up before, I think to you like pebbling, right? It's
Yeah.
this, yeah, it's like this thing. It's like,
I know you're talking a lot about autism, but I'm trying to make this be a neurodivergent thing, right? So are you
yeah,
able
but it's
to
hard.
include,
It's yeah, schizos, I
like,
guess,
you're literally of that
ADHD people in some
side,
respects. Yeah,
right? You have the ADHD, you have the schizo spectrum stuff. Can you add in that to the
sure.
conversation so I can
Yeah.
have a more
Okay. So like
holistic
for
understanding?
example, yeah, yeah. Okay, but I just want to do the pebbling thing and then I'll connect it to. My side
Okay.
of things. Okay, so a lot of autistic people will share things like that they have, like they'll want to like info dump on you, and they want to share their excitement of that thing with you, because it is a form of like showing some kind of affection
Because
sometimes.
that's, yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
And this is also for the audience. They do that because that's how they connect with other people. They generally have this emphasis on things. So when they see the thing,
Mhm.
they're like, oh, the thing reminded me of this person. I should tell the person or give the person this thing because
Mhm.
that's how they view connection, right? So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and also like it might seem weird to the neurotypical person because they're gonna feel like, oh, they showed me this thing, and yeah, even if they do find it interesting, right? A lot of autistic people will be like, oh, look at this thing, and then they'll just be like, they'll just kind of leave it at that, and like they don't
Like,
say like, oh, I thought of you when I, or oh, I really
yeah.
wanted to show, like, or let's watch it like together necessarily, right? Like it's just like, oh, I saw a thing, and this thing is something I think you will enjoy, and so I am sharing the thing, or this is something I enjoy that I think you will enjoy. I will give you. I want to show you the thing,
The
right? And
thing is also symbolic of
yeah,
their connection.
yeah, okay,
If for anybody that understands autistic and
yeah. See,
understanding.
okay, so I was told I pebble and info dump. Shake my head. Wasn't sure how to take that. Links and memes. Yeah, I mean it is like you'll send like it'll literally be like you'll have some people that you go back and forth sending like articles, memes, videos, but you guys barely ever have like a big old conversation about what you guys did that day or had for breakfast or thought about or what you're sad or happy about necessarily. Like you would just keep like sending that person things. Um,
How does someone of
on my
not
side, okay.
autistic
So
cognition,
like
yes,
I did exactly those things. But with me, it was like I wanted to share, like I wanted to show people, and I still do. I wanted to show people. I wanted to see, engage with, and show people experiences. Right? It was like, oh, this thing has like this piece of media. This thing causes an experience. I want to know how that impacts you because I want to see the different facets of how that experience can appear in others, and also like I had a good experience with this, and I want to see if there's like a good experience will happen, or you'll have a different experience with this thing. And so I'm
how
like,
is that still not autistic pebbling?
well, because I'm focused on the idea of it. Like it's not even about like it's not, oh, this thing is under the category or subject of things that I find interesting, right? It's more like this thing has something abstract about it that has value. And I want to like just throw it. I want to get it into um like, and so I get like excited that somebody might engage with it. It's even if it's in a way that's negative, right? It's just they'll engage with it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this has like some concept, this thing. It's like very nebulous feeling. And then like when people that are willing to engage with things, that even if it's something they normally wouldn't engage with, and then they have an experience like that's like a form of communication for me that's really important. And I've been doing that shit since I was like a little kid, right? And one of the things that fucked me up as a kid was that like I would like just say like I would see something or read something, and I was like, or play a video game or something, and I was just having like this like profound experience with it, right? Like it was just like it felt like these ideas that were like being like felt real, and it just and so then like I would try to show like my parents. I'd be like, look at this thing, look at this thing, mom, look at this thing, dad. Like, wow, look at this. It's connected, and like it's connected to my life. It's connected to everyone's life. It's connected to the world.
Well, because you
And
say that you want, like, you find interest in people having these experiences with
I want
these
to see how it
ideas,
connects to them in their world.
right?
Yeah.
But I can still see from an autistic perspective if they understand, because they can still see the same ideas and
Mhm.
beliefs that you do, but they experience them in like their own way, right? Their emphasis on senses,
Yeah.
right? So they can still say, oh, this idea that you have, I still understand it, but it feels this way, and I want to see how the other person feels when they engage with it as well. So it's still the same exact thing. It's just How you experience
well, it
is
is no,
just
but
from the other angle.
yeah, it's
So
it's
still
still pebbling. Yeah,
feels
it's
like
pebbling. It is. It's
Okay.
that. It's exactly
Is
pebbling.
this the shoehorn theory I'm thinking about?
No, it's literally the same thing, but on a different kind of way of thinking.
That's
It's
exactly
still
what I mean by horseshoe theory.
yeah, it's the same thing. My schizo ass does the same thing autistic people do in a very different way and for very different reasons and that are more like meta, abstract, weird, conceptual, just like a lot more nebulous, referential, tangential, and so like uh, I
So
I
it's
do
still
the
the
same
same
thing.
action. It's just how people interface with the action. You
Hmm.
interface it with a much different way than I do, even though we still understand we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, we're yeah, like,
Okay.
yeah, it's cool. Like,
Now, my problem is in
mm,
how this all ties back into the schizoid experience.
yeah,
I still think that there's a really big problem in differentiating
mm,
whether or not a schizoid will think this by default
mm,
or will be artificially, how do I put it, taught to be neurodivergent. What I mean by that is someone that isn't neurodivergent, but
mm,
because of their upbringing
mm,
in which they view being separated from the only people they know from when they were really born,
mm,
like
mm,
really young,
mm.
as not being okay. Like they cannot have this connection
Yeah,
that they otherwise would normally have. And because it starts so early
yeah.
and because it's cultivated throughout their entire life,
Uh-huh.
you get this artificial represent or not representation, but what's the word? Yeah, you get this artificial representation of someone that looks in every way neurodivergent,
Mhm.
but that's not how that's not why they do it. They don't pebble for other people because they like the thing. They pebble because they were taught that they can't do otherwise.
Okay. Well, in an environment like that, they couldn't even pebble with those people if it was that bad.
Like if you're being taught to pebble
Yeah.
since as far back as since you were born,
Who would teach you that?
then you're gonna look autistic.
Who would teach you that?
The way you're taught that is through a negative.
No, but my point is like, okay, if you're talking about like really like neglectful parents and people in their life that would like cause enough trauma or are dismissive enough to create this like a lot of the ideas that are often brought up in literature about how this develops, why would they engage with pebbling? Why would
Because the
they wouldn't give a
severity
shit
at which
about the things that you try to
now
show
we get
them?
to the severity, right?
Okay.
So people, there's going to be a lot of schizoids that do pebble, but there's going to be the degree to which they pebble is still very different. And if you really
Yeah, there
understand
might be.
your divergency, you'll understand that this person pebbles in a way that is more like
Well,
it's more indicative that they want to pebble.
what's interesting is behavior I've seen in a lot of schizoids is they become averse to actually pebbling because of the trauma. So it's like they start going like they start having these thoughts of like if I share things with people that like they even if they enjoy it, it's like it's tainted. It's now touched by another. It's bad now because a person touched it, and so now
Good.
I don't want it.
That feels like a counterflow because
Yeah.
when you have someone that's, for example, neurodivergent, giving like pebbling something to someone else
Mm,
because that's how they connect with someone, that's their symbolic form of connection, right? The thing and the person are coming together.
mhm.
So when you have the schizoid, the root problem that the schizoid has is being invaded. Or I want to say or being neglected, but I haven't seen
Okay,
anybody that
I have
like
some stuff
talks
in
about
chat I want to bring
or
up.
neglect.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's see here. Somebody said was on here your theory about SPD neurodivergent might be true for you or others. I I okay, I just haven't. I guess I haven't met very many neurotypical people that are schizoid. My Personally, my thinking.
I really want to
what,
differentiate that, though,
yeah, I
because
get
don't
it.
want weird evidence
Yeah,
to
I
be
get it.
strong
Oh,
arm.
one thing I was gonna say, even if only 30% of the people I've ever spoken to that say they're schizoid or diagnosed, whatever, are actually, one thing that makes me confident about some of my views is I it's crazy to think. It's pathetic, to be honest. But I am a person that has spoken to more schizoids on the face of the planet than any human being that has probably ever existed, and that's horrible.
Well, not necessarily.
Who?
We'll talk about schizoids concerning schizoid problems. Yes, absolutely.
No, I talk to
But
schizoids like all the time, all the
yeah, but
time.
there could be someone that just naturally has a bigger net because I've talked to so many more people that they have
Oh,
thought
of
since
course, you do the
in this
autistic
way.
thing. Yeah, no, I get it. Okay, mathematically, sure. Okay, you're right. But directly engaged with? No. Like one on one? I mean, if you're talking about like they have like a million subscribers, and if you're counting that as an engagement, but directly engaged with, doubt it. Doubt it.
What about
Especially,
therapists that have more than 20 years of experience and have had
well, they
a
didn't
fair
engage
number of
with them.
similar clients?
They talked to them, and they probably engaged with whatever mass they were producing or whatever. I don't think there was like a direct engagement of any kind there. Like, or most of the time, schizoids don't even go get therapy. They don't bother. They don't get it, or they gave up very quickly before they even get to a point in which that even can be surmised. There's a lot of ways, like just it's crazy. It's
I
crazy.
really want to emphasize the
Hmm.
origin of the disorder
Yeah.
being rooted in
Hmm.
a nurture environment
Yeah. No,
to
it's
which
absolutely the case. Okay.
what
Yeah.
here's the question. I do want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Because there's plenty of literature talking about how the schizoid has been like via experience invaded in
Hmm.
some way or
Yeah.
another. The parent projects their
Mhm.
wants and desires onto the
Yeah.
child, and or they invade literally their personal space
Yes. All
constantly.
that's true.
But then there's the problem I have now is that there's some schizoids that say they don't have memories of this, but they do have memories of massive neglect.
Hmm.
And I wonder how much of these two balances, because there is
Hmm.
neglect and invasion. You can't have just one or the
Well,
other.
yeah. The severity of how like schizoid a
I'm
person.
wondering how
Um.
how much of the neglect
Mhm.
can
Okay. Sure.
how little
Oh.
invasion they need if they have a lot of
Okay.
neglect.
It's
How
this
does
this is
that
so this is
manifest?
so easy to answer, in my opinion. Is an inborn sensitivity weakness for any? I'm just looking at chat really good. And anyone could develop. Yeah, Brian had said, and anyone could develop autism or not, right? Let me explain. Okay, but don't. You said you want an answer, Shadow. Hold on, give me a sec.
I do. Sorry,
Okay.
someone asked a question and you
Okay.
responded.
Okay. Okay. So this is my answer. The literature is correct. The neglect is there. The trauma caused by that neglect is a lot of what develops this personality disorder. It's fundamental, right? Which group, based on anything you've understood about how a schizoid would develop, which groups would have such an occurrence happen without necessarily having conventionally neglectful parents, siblings, or peers?
That's not answering my
No,
question
it is.
directly.
Let me explain. Invasion, right?
Hmm.
A neurodivergent kid is going to be feeling constantly invaded, constantly controlled, constantly dismissed, constantly a lot of things engulfed, even if the intentions of the parent are good. Unless that parent has an understanding of what's happening and how they can nurture and help them and understands like all those sorts of things, they're surrounded by a bunch of people they cannot mirror intuitively. And they're being
I think you're already going off too much. I really do want to stop you there,
okay.
unless you
No,
have
I mean like it's
okay.
all invasive. They're just the population. I'm not saying a
Because
neurotypical person can't
there's
be schizoid. It's just the amount of neglect. It can't just be your parents neglected you. it's a because you feel neglected by the world. You don't just feel neglected by
Okay,
your
but
parents.
emphasis on the lack of invasion.
There is
Right.
invasion. What do you mean?
No,
Tons of it.
okay. There are schizoids I've talked to
Oh,
that
they don't have
when
memories
I
of having
express
like
when I
yeah.
express there is a precedent for children that feel invaded
Mhm.
or are literally physically invaded.
Okay. Yeah.
That is part of the solution that creates these schizoid adaptations.
Yeah.
And
Well.
then there are these schizoids that say, I don't remember these feelings of
Mhm.
invasion. I only remember neglect.
Okay, but well, one, if we're talking about a schizoid, a lot of that stuff's kind of shut away anyway, right? Like
Mhm.
the emotions attached to memories often.
Okay, but
So
my question is that really possible? Is there like how confident are you that there needs to be
well,
invasion? Because I'm
no, but this is
fairly confident at
this
this
is what I'm
point.
trying to say. Invasion can come from good parents. When you are a neurodivergent kid,
And they also can be just
my
naturally
parents
invasive
forcing
regardless if
me,
you're
yeah,
neurodivergent.
yeah, of course, they could be like neglectful parents, invasive parents, right? That would probably make a person that is neurodivergent, that already has the sensitivities, that much more entrenched in this issue. That's probably
Okay, but
okay.
I stop trying to strong arm the neurodivergent aspect into this
I'm
because
not
there
trying to.
are
That's not
things that are invasive to
yeah,
neurotypical
yeah, of
people.
course, of course. But my thing is, oh, here I got an answer for you. Now I know what
Like
you're saying. Okay,
there's
I got it.
the
Yeah,
Greenberg's book talks
mhm.
about people's doors literally being removed
Yeah,
from their
of
rooms.
course.
There's my experience of parents coming into my room, rearranging my room. That would be like while I'm in the middle of the night while I'm sleeping. Sometimes I wouldn't be asleep. That's how I would know this happened.
Wow.
That's invasive to children that
Yeah,
aren't
of
neurodivergent
course. Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So how you know how does
Okay.
this fit into the mix?
Let okay. So, as far as like what is it, like physical or any kind of like intrusion that's consistently occurring in some way or another, the thing that happens, right? Even if a child, unless that child, let's just say that, unless that child has no access at any point to the outside world, most children do. Okay. So, the problem is when that child in that neglectful, invasive environment leaves it, or they perceive, even through media, that relationships aren't always like that. They exist in different forms. Even if they seem like a dream or something they can never possess themselves, they become cognizant of the fact that there are things in the world, right, that they can connect to in the way of people, connect to people in a way that was impossible with the people in their lives that were being invasive, being neglectful, right? The problem with a neurodivergent kid, right, in my opinion, is that when they go out into the world, when they look at the stories, they look at how other people behave, they see what a happier relationship is. They see kids saying, "Oh, my dad's so great. He does this and he does that, and we did this and we did that." And that person's telling you things that you're like, "Those things make me feel not good. Those things make me feel overwhelmed. I don't like those things that you keep saying are good. Why?" Right? My parents keep like an example, right? My parents like forced me to be in like little league. I didn't give a fuck about baseball. I didn't want to run around hitting a fucking ball. I wasn't good at it because I wasn't interested in getting good at it. So that just led to like obviously like me just being useless on the field. I wasn't interested in like impressing the other people because I didn't feel good about like, yeah, you did really good at baseball and we like you. It's just like, okay, I don't care about baseball. But my parents were like, "Oh, you need to be in a team. You got to be around more kids. You got to do this. You got to do that, and you're gonna go." And I would constantly tell my parents like, "I don't want to
If the
do this."
people
Right?
praising you are people you are scared of, regardless of whether you're
I wasn't scared
neurodivergent
of
or
them.
not, you will. Okay, but I'm saying, if you have these feelings of invasion from
Yeah,
these people,
yeah,
part of you is scared of them,
yeah. Of
just
course,
point blankly.
that's how you
And
develop.
if you're being praised by
Yeah.
people that the child is scared from,
Mhm.
of they will not like the praise.
Yeah, of
Neurodivergent
course
or
not.
not.
How do you think you end up with avoidant dismissive and avoidant anxious? That's why I say that's why when
How okay,
yeah
but that's different though, because if you have someone that has memories
mhm,
of being invaded,
yeah
that doesn't the fear of invasion overrides the fear of being rejected. There is if if the child
mhm,
thinks this is more pressing than being rejected,
okay
then that is going to be a different cultivation,
yeah of
regardless
course
of them being neurodivergent. You don't need to
mm,
be neurodivergent to think this is more of a problem than the other.
no, but that's all the issue is that's all you have when oftentimes if you're that sensitive neurodivergent kid, right? What reward system in your environment that all these interpersonal interactions, what reward system are they generally going to be able to provide of any kind that isn't going to be just associated to a variety of negative things to some degree or another? Even the healthiest neurodivergent person, maybe not nowadays because there's a lot more understanding and people work with it, whatever, would say that like, yeah, they're generally there's mental health issues like almost every time. There's like such a higher prevalence of um, neurodivergent people having depression, anxiety, a variety of problems psychologically. That isn't because they just they just correlate. Oh, when you're just naturally more anxious if you're like autistic. It's like no, you're an anxious person because you were on edge from a world that was bombarding you with things that were making you anxious.
So when I talk about
Yeah.
these, like when my original question was, how does the manifestation of schizoid
Mhm.
adaptations, not how, I think that's a badly phrased sentence.
Sure.
How do people that relate to schizoid adaptations also claim that they have very little to no feelings of invasion and only neglect? Is that possible? Are you confident that that can even be a manifestation,
Well,
or
okay.
would
Well,
you
then
be
we would
more
be
confident in
arguing.
saying they need to
Okay.
be invaded?
Well, this is the issue. Then we would be arguing whether the idea of um, schizoid staying away from people because of fear of engulfment, fear of the things being tainted, fear of all this sort of stuff, right? That involves being controlled, being puppeteered, being pulled into obligations that don't make sense to them, that they don't want to participate in. Somebody that develops these sort of things, I personally cannot imagine this developing without significant feelings of invasion throughout childhood. So I don't know how somebody cannot feel invaded throughout their entire childhood to a significant degree, even their adolescence, right? Even if they didn't have parents that had the door open and all this shit, right? Why would they develop a personality disorder that is so aversive to that very thing? If that very thing, why would you develop a defense for something if it wasn't a problem?
That makes a lot more sense now that you've worded it like that. But then I have the problem of, how do I put this? For someone that only has feelings of neglect, they can still be neurodivergent, but
Mhm.
then they will more likely be centered towards avoidant personality instead of schizoid if it's only neglect.
Yeah,
So I think the way you worded it
yeah,
feels right, that there needs to be feelings of invasion.
has to be, has to
But
be,
I'm
has to be. Like how can it develop without it? That
yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
but I just
What's the rebuttal? Like,
I
I'm
don't
curious.
like the strong arm. It's not a rebuttal. I agree with you, and I was just saying I
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I was trying to work out.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
But what feels exhausting
Mm-hmm.
is when I hear you talk about how corrosive this can be to a neurodivergent child and how
Mm-hmm.
severe this can happen and manifest in a neurodivergent child.
Yeah.
Like that I don't care that it does that specifically for a neurodivergent child,
Mhm.
because point blankly, any child that will go through that
Mhm.
will still have these
Yeah,
problems, right?
no, but the
So
reason it's important is because the demographic that would go through that are neurodivergent kids. It's not that neurotypical kids can't ever go through that. It's just that all neurodivergent children, especially born prior to like 2010 or whatever, or 2015, went through that. Now, their level of sensitivity, how they deal with it, the defenses that go off, whether it's more like a dissociative style or whatever, right? Some of those things might be genetic, absolutely, right? But what kind of kid could just exist in in the neurotypical world that is not going to experience those things unless you have parents and people and peers in their lives that are actively engaging with them in healthier ways that make sense to their experience, to their
I know of a
cognitive
way to
intuition.
manifest someone that feels engulfed and obligated toward their parents that
Mhm.
are also invasive, will
Okay.
actively neglect and choose to have less relationships that would foster their increased perceptual awareness, right? So
Yeah.
you have someone that is invaded as a child,
Mhm.
is neglected as a child, but because they also are neurotypical and would otherwise be geared
Yeah.
towards interpersonal connection, see that in their parents and
Mhm.
say, this is the only interpersonal connection I have. It's abusive, it's
Yeah.
hostile, it's
That's how you develop
invasive,
all kinds of
but
other personality disorders like
I feel
narcissism and
owed to them to also remain here and not actively choose other people, because this is what I have, right? So then you have this
okay.
person that is
But they're
actively
still
neglected,
aware. That's a
engaging with the
difference.
world.
You're not getting
No,
it. You're
not
not getting it.
necessarily,
No.
because you talk to these people.
Mhm.
There are, like, I'm sure you've met
There's like
these
a
people. I can
choice.
think of one off the top of my head
No,
that
but
even I've met.
there's a choice that's being made. They're aware those things exist, but there is a choice to keep those things from themselves due to the reasons you're talking
It's
about.
not much of a choice if you don't understand what the other options are.
Well, you could see them unless they're actively
Can
keeping you
you?
away from them. Like,
Can you?
unless,
For a
well, maybe,
child that doesn't understand what the world has to offer and thinks this is what I
yeah.
want to do
No, but
because I'm
as they
geared
get
towards
older,
interpersonal connection,
as they get older and get to engage with more
and they're
people,
already entrenched in their ways, yeah, as they get
yeah,
older, it only get
and
worse.
that's why they would develop a type of personality disorder that emphasizes to some degree or is aversive to, for rejection sensitivity reasons, right? A type of issues, set of issues that would be still running in conjunction with more neurotypical standard.
No, because the
That's
person
my
I
thought.
just said in my example isn't someone that would care about rejection sensitivity.
Okay.
They would care about how bothersome and cumbersome relationships are of any variety
Why?
because of their only or connection they have with their parents being one of obligation, invasiveness, and apathy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what's the core issue? Like, why?
Because they're interpersonally focused.
Okay.
So the one connection they
Yeah, but the
had, because it
schizoid is
was so
not interpersonally
invasive,
focused.
they can be
I mean,
in
they can
this
be for like
example
practical reasons. No, but what I'm saying is that
because
I mean, literally, like being interpersonally focused to a significant degree in almost every instance would run contrary to the whole schizoid thing, unless those focuses are on are predicated upon safety from invasion and consumption from people that cannot provide you things that make sense to you, or and you cannot give them things that they want because those things feel as if they are just invading you, right? Because there's nothing there, there's no back and forth.
whether or not someone's focused interpersonally speaking doesn't feel to me that it has anything to do with the schizoid adaptations.
Oh,
Because from my perspective, you can have someone that would otherwise be focused on interpersonal relationships.
Sure.
But if their only understanding of them is invasive, engulfing,
Yeah.
obligatory, etc.,
Yeah.
then no wonder they'll dissociate from it, right? But the reason how someone would get to that point later in life can be very easily explained by how engulfing and invasive their parents were.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have this singular, powerful, invasive connection that tells them this is how relationships are,
Yeah.
and kind of represses
And
them.
they have a
from
negative
making new
association to that
connections,
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
how they would connect.
Yeah, and
Like,
that's how, in
the-
my opinion, you get an avoidant dismissive.
But they don't care about rejection sensitivity. They themselves are saying, "I don't want
An
more
avoidant,
connections
an
because
avoidant
my
dismissive.
connections
Let
suck."
me explain. An avoidant dismissive person has mechanisms inside themselves that disassociate them from feeling bad about rejection through these sort of like, but they'll still feel good about acceptance. It'll usually defend them from rejection to a point where they don't even feel like they care at all.
But how does that like integrate into my example, where the source of the frustration is how engulfing and consuming their desire for connection is, and they will choose no connection, but they still feel obligated for the abusive connection they
you
have.
just keep describing an avoidant, in my opinion.
But where's the rejection sensitivity?
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said. Where's the rejection sensitivity?
It's literally a mechanism that designed itself around avoiding the feelings of rejection you did experience as a child.
Even if they're still in active communication with their parents and them,
Of course,
putting them
if they
down doesn't make them
disassociated
feel any
from,
worse?
it's the actual interpersonal concerns, or I guess in some ways more neurotypical interpersonal concerns and fears that child had and understood on an intuitive level that caused the damage. It's the rejection, the neglect from the things that they needed. A neurodivergent child needs those things, but they look very different. Now, somebody said something here. Yes, the child. Oh, no. MTN said the schizoid is not interpersonally focused later in life because they gave up and are disassociated. Yes. See, the problem is that two things can be correct and they don't negate each other in this conversation. So
I'm talking about how this manifests in someone that isn't neurodivergent. Because
okay,
would you
sure.
agree or disagree
yeah.
that there are neurotypical schizoids.
There could be.
There could be.
And there could be.
Different.
Look, this is my position. The conditions that it would require would have to be so extreme that there would be some incredibly small portion, a minutia.
I don't think it's really that extreme.
It's extreme as fuck, in my opinion.
I don't think it's extreme at all, because you can have a schizoid that there's one manifestation I've literally seen where someone isn't neurodivergent, but they feel obligated to their family, their abusive family.
Yeah, that's common. This is like common, yes.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And they've been like this for as long as they can remember. And they actively refuse other connections because this one that they have is so. I don't even have the words.
I'm just having trouble, like what you're saying. For me, I don't see how you're arguing that they're schizoid.
I'm arguing that they're schizoid and still neurotypical because the source of their frustration, despite being interpersonally focused, is still other people are too much.
Okay. That's very different.
Not because they reject me, but because they have too many
demands. That's literally, like, this is what's frustrating. You keep describing right now what you're describing to me, based on my understanding of all this. What you're describing to me is an avoidant dismissive.
Then how does a schizoid neurodivergent think anything different?
Because the world itself, the environment itself, it's not that there was rejection sensitivity in that sense. It was that the world didn't make sense and there was no one there to mirror, no one there for you to explain to you what the fuck the world is and how you should function.
How does that stop them from connecting in neurodivergent environments?
It doesn't. That's why the server works. Did that click?
No.
Okay. If you get that very sensitive, you know, whether it used to be ASPI, whatever, high function, whatever. I hate the whole high, low
Because
functioning thing.
when-
Hold, no,
when I
don't
hear-
interrupt, because I'm saying the thing. You know, I lose my train of thought. I'm trying to clarify something. So, see, it just happened. What was the last word?
ASPI?
No, before that you
frustrated about
said
ASPI?
the question that came up. ADHD. I love you.
How does that prevent them from?
Oh yeah, neurodivergent.
connecting
Yeah,
with
okay,
the
yeah, okay. So let me
environment?
explain. Now, if you have that very sensitive child that is neurodivergent to a significant degree in which their kind of cognitive intuition is that much different, right? And like I said, they just have this hypersensitivity on top of that. If you put that person or that child in an environment with other neurodivergent people, right? Say peers and kids, right? And it isn't, see, but you could still get one if you have like a schizo kid and you think, well, he's autistic. And so then you put him in there with all the autists and he's not connecting to them either, right? But he'll have an easier time. He'll still have an easier time connecting to them, in my opinion, because of some of the overlaps in communication and stuff. But, and the emphasis on things, you know. But my point is, if you put that kid in that environment and they had access to those things, I personally think you would not get a schizoid. The problem is that most kids, especially my age, even younger, even now, depending on where you're born, where you're at, right? Maybe if you're born in California and you have like parents that are neurodivergent, self-aware, and they know you got it too, and so then they make sure to like really bolster and communicate with you in ways that make sense to you and answer questions in a way that help you and shit like that. Yeah, then you, I mean, you might still have an anxious kid, you might still have some other issues, right? Who knows, right? Everyone's different. But I don't think you're going to get a schizoid. I really don't think you're going to get a schizoid.
Here's a wrench in your plan.
Sure.
The children that are neurodivergent,
Mhm.
neurodivergency is by far the most common factor that makes a child neurodivergent is genetics.
Mhm.
Is that it's passed down.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about someone that comes from a fucking neurodivergent family
Mhm.
that is generally just invasive and neglectful? So when they have other environments or even their own environment that is still quote unquote neurodivergent friendly,
Yeah.
the source of what makes them schizoid isn't that they aren't in a non, there's a word someone used. Fuck.
Okay.
Whatever. When
Oh.
the environment isn't of their like subtype, whatever.
Yeah.
The point is that it feels invasive.
Okay.
Like the outside world is externalized, or
Yeah.
it's
It's
the
dangerous. It
external
becomes
world is
dangerous.
pathologized.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not, why is it dangerous? Not because, for example, a neurodivergent kid, it's not because it's not neurodivergent,
Mhm.
it's because my family fucking sucks.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah,
like
but in
the
your case,
emphasis
your family
on-
sucked and you're neurodivergent.
Okay, yeah, that could be a multiplier, but
Yeah,
that's
definitely a
still,
multiplier. Most assuredly.
you know, that's still for someone that, for example, is neurotypical,
Mhm.
despite having environments that still adhere to their subtype, they still can have an environment that feels very invasive. And if they're in that far more often than they are in their other environments,
Mhm.
that can still train them to not want to engage with environments at all because
Okay.
it's an all or nothing defense mechanism.
When you say this, I just don't get, like, okay, rejection sensitivity as a child, interpersonal rejection sensitivity, or conventionally interpersonal rejection. That the thing is, even what's funny is that even the neurodivergent child is rejection sensitive as well as a child. But when I say rejection sensitivity, I'm not talking about like some primal, like, rejected, my caretakers aren't taking care of me type stuff. Like that. No, I mean, I am saying that when I say rejection sensitivity as a child, right? But as you get older, when I talk about rejection sensitivity, I'm talking about like social rejection. from peers and others, and the fear that comes from that, and the still need of wanting that in those ways, right? So an avoidant person will still stay away from the world, and an avoidant dismissive person will still stay away from a lot of people, and they will have a lot of reasons for why they do so, right? That are still tied to the types of concerns that, in my opinion, a neurotypical person would be more preoccupied interpersonally with.
But when I hear avoidant dismissive, I hear of all of these copes so that I don't get rejected.
Yeah, but an avoidant dismissive person will get often to a point where there's not cope. It's like they're literally wired that way. Like they just will not feel bad about it, but they will blame the other person. It'll be kind of like that person says,
what you
okay,
just said.
so like they'll be like that, like say my, I don't know, my in a relationship, right? A boyfriend says something like, oh, you're so fucking cold, or like, what's wrong with you, or whatever. And then like the dismissive avoidant person would kind of react with like, what's your problem? Like, why are you so needy? Like, why are you like this? Like, who cares? Like, why do you need hugs all the time? Like, that's just weird. Like, what's wrong with you?
That seems like a defensive mechanism to avoid the feeling of rejection.
Yeah, it is, but they wouldn't even be aware of it. Okay. That's the thing. They wouldn't even be like, they're not sitting there going, I'm going to pretend like I don't want any of this, but I secretly really want to. Like, no.
Regardless if they're conscious or unconscious of it, that's still the core reason why their reflex says to do that is because they don't like the feeling of rejection. When you have someone that's still a neurotypical schizoid, in my example, the problem still is because the person's connection feels invasive, because their original understanding of connections are based off of their parents, which are invasive, which are engulfing, which are obligatory.
In what way? Engulfing, invasive, in what way?
They feel...
How did that child interpret how did they interpret what was invasive? Right.
It feels obligatory, and they learned helplessness in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a, if I don't do this, they'll reject me way.
Well, yeah. If okay. Oh, man, it's turned into a whole multi-layered mess, because I feel like there's things I'm saying, and it might just be like a miscommunication thing, but I feel like there's things I'm saying that I think make sense, and you're saying they don't, and I feel like there's things you're saying that I think, oh, that's already there, like that's already part of what I'm talking about, but you keep saying that I'm not, so I'm getting a little lost in it. Because I'm
saying it can be of someone that you believe is, like, for example, avoidant dismissive.
Okay.
But when you describe avoidant dismissive, that still talks about I don't like the feeling of being actively rejected by this person. And in my example, that's not the problem the schizoid has, regardless if they're neurodivergent, neurotypical.
Well, I think they definitely had that problem when they were a child. Before they realized that all their concerns and all their feelings are not compatible.
Well, if everybody had that problem, then it's redundant.
What do you mean if everybody had that problem?
Because if even neurodivergents can have rejection sensitivity, then what's the difference between them being avoidant?
It's the type. Well, no, it's. Oh, man, when I say rejection sensitivity, because like when people hear rejection sensitivity, like it's hard to talk about because people just think like, oh, people don't like me, right? My parents don't like me.
That's what I think of.
Okay, yeah, okay, but rejection can also be, and you know, this is, I gotta come up with a better word. You're right. Rejection can also be like a type of passive neglect of like you turn into like a person of like, oh, I am not a worthwhile creature. I do not have a purpose here. So maybe it isn't rejection sensitivity. You're right. I gotta think of a better word, including caretakers in kindergarten or school. And beyond, that's the difference.
Rejection sensitivity seems to be a very defined thing.
Yeah, then I'm just using it wrong. So you're right.
Why when I say the neurotypical schizoid in my example isn't rejection.
Yeah, they would still be. I think they would still be rejection sensitive, and I don't think they would be. I don't think they would be. That's why if it's the rejection sensitivity you're talking about, that would just, in my opinion, not make them schizoid.
Because I'm thinking about someone that, from a learned helplessness angle,
Mhm.
feels obligated to care for their parents.
Okay, that like how, okay, you know
Because
what? Like
that's just
you're
the
giving me
way
like
things
the
are.
issue is that like I don't know all the details, and then you're giving me like you're giving me a story of one person and what they're saying and what
I'm
they
not basing
experienced.
this off of a real life example. I'm basing this off of, well, I mean,
Oh,
I
I
guess I
thought you
am.
said earlier you were.
I guess I am.
Okay, you said you were. I don't
Well, I
know. I'm
mean,
confused
but
now.
I don't know them personally,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So it's kind of hard.
So somebody
Okay,
said their
that would be
story,
better
and then
then.
you're just kind of
Yeah.
telling me about it. Okay. Okay. Well, look, I'm not saying they don't exist. I just haven't met any, and I've talked to a shitload of schizoids, and all of when I hear that the main reason they stay away from people is because of rejection sensitivity, of like people won't like me, people will think I'm a bad object. If that is the core of your reason for staying away from people, in my opinion, you're just not schizoid.
Yeah, and I would agree with you.
Okay, but that's my issue, right? What person would most likely have that sort of have the emphasis of being like overwhelmed or controlled, right? Would be most sensitive to that, if not
They
neurodivergent
don't need to
kids.
be sensitive. They just need to have basic human empathy.
Mm.
Because if they don't do this for their parents, then their parents will probably off themselves or be
Okay, so
homeless or
well,
whatever.
yeah, they might, but that's the thing. Like most schizoids are, I mean, at least maybe like I know there's schizoids that do love one of their parents or are connected to them. But there's just it's a common occurrence that like schizoids are often like sort of disconnected from their family members to a significant degree
Almost
in
like
a
they
similar
don't
way.
care about interpersonal connection in the same way the neurotypical does,
Yeah,
my
which is
emphasis here.
why they develop this particular style of disorder or whatever.
So when I think about this example I'm bringing to you,
Hmm.
it's this person still doesn't like the inherent problems with connection as they have only experienced it,
Okay.
but they're still geared to have this care about it.
Yeah. Okay. You can have an ethical or moral a system regarding something without it being based on
They won't feel the need to distance themselves from this
I've
toxic relationship
yeah,
as much
because
as
of
a
a
neurodivergent
moral
would.
or ethical obligation. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I've literally talked to schizoids that take care of their parents or are worried about taking care of their parents that are getting older and things like that, right? And the reasoning for it is not because my parents, I love them so much, they're going to be gone. I want to make sure. No, it's usually like this is the right thing to do. They raised me as best they could. I'm empty. I have the problem. It's unethical for me to punish them or not help them as they're getting older, because if it weren't for them, I would not exist, or I would not have been born, or I would have died. Or they feel like there's a debt that needs to be paid. I've literally heard this more than a few times as to why they don't just leave their toxic, often sometimes toxic parents. Because there's when the parent is toxic, it's a debt so that I don't feel like I owe them anymore because I feel like this debt. And then when it's not so toxic, it's more like they did their best. I'm disconnected for my reasons. I will not punish them for it. Like I don't feel emotionally connected to my parents as much as like a person normally would be, from their experience, but they don't have like a disdain or a hatred or a disgust mechanism associated to their parents.
That does change my perspective,
Are
but
Zoids just resigned avoidance? No, no,
no, no, not at all.
no, not at all.
That's a
And
resigned
then
avoidant, as you just said.
yeah, and then another thing too is something you said, MTN, that I wanted to because I got to end the stream. I'm fucking tired. Um, One thing that you said that I have a bias in favor of brain issues rather than psychodynamics. No, I do not. I believe that a lot of the psychodynamic aspects that are in the literature, the most vulnerable group are going to be neurodivergent kids because there's so many factors that could be experienced as invasiveness, engulfment, and all sorts of shit. That's why you have a bunch of schizoids. They had, by all intents and purposes, good parents. Their parents weren't invasive. Their parents weren't neglectful, right? Their parents just didn't, like, couldn't give them what they needed emotionally, cognitively, and so on, right? Like my mother, I'll give you an example. My mother was not a bad woman. Like, she wasn't a terrible mother, right? She wasn't like neglectful and dismissive and abusive or any of that, right? I just like felt like my mother was not even a bad object. She was a neutral object. She was just an object that was there, and she provided food and shelter. But when it came down to my emotional needs, she could not meet them because they were so fundamentally incompatible. And she had no tools or ways to engage. And even on top of that, I didn't fully understand what was going on with me and why it was so different. Right? My mother is an angel who doted on me. My mother doted on me too. Actually, it's why I didn't develop as many useful skills as I could have. But I never felt like the doting she was doing, it didn't ever feel good.
The doting often felt selfish.
It just felt like a thing that was being done. I didn't understand, and some of the stuff that she was doing didn't feel like doting. It felt uncomfortable and invasive.
As a child, the doting felt, in some part or another, this feels wrong, this feels gross.
This feels unintuitive, and I'm averse to this. I don't understand why mommy thinks this is good, and she's doing something good. I don't like it. I wish she would stop. But then if I tell her to stop, she cries. And
yeah,
then,
and as I've gotten older, I would say I felt that way as a child because this doting came from a selfish source and not from a I want to love my child.
Well, that's how you perceive it. But from their perspective, my mom loved me. She loved me.
Yeah, but,
like, I'm not going to doubt that my mother loved me. But I just didn't feel.
You can have multiple things going on, but I can definitely.
Yeah. I just couldn't love her back the way she needed me to, and she couldn't love me in a way that made sense to me.
There's definitely something to be said about having a correct understanding that this person wanted to parent a child because they wanted to be known, even to themselves, as a good parent, or
yeah, I mean there's that possibility. Yeah, I mean there is that element in every human. That
selfishness that makes it gross as a child because a child will understand you're not doing this entirely for me.
Yeah, but if your mother gave you the type of affection that you needed, that was actually intuitive and comfortable, I doubt you'd be thinking that about it.
Yeah, I feel like we could argue that.
Because if I would say I would argue it feels selfish because it doesn't make sense, because and it's something that's just it benefits them. It doesn't benefit you.
Even if you dote for a child or dote on a child, and it's intuitive to the child, that still is expressed. If you are selfish, the child will still pick up on
exactly
that in some way or another.
Vibe and what you're saying.
Even if it's intuitive, something about it will feel off.
Yeah, because you're neurodivergent and they don't know how to engage with it.
You don't need to be neurodivergent.
Okay. But you don't need to be, but they would be the demographic that would just constantly be in that situation.
Well, I'm just saying the thing that makes it gross cannot be completely hidden away from a child because it's intuitive.
If the way your mother,
it will still be
let me explain. If the way your mother, as an autistic guy, if the way your mother engaged with you emotionally, cared for you, focused on the things that actually made you feel safe and good, right? You would maybe, as you got older, you would understand, like, oh, this is what human beings do, and there's some selfish component, blah, blah, blah. It would not have felt aversive when it was happening.
Then I would argue she wasn't doing it from a source of selfishness.
Yeah, she might have not been.
Then that completely avoids the problem entirely.
Yeah, like, for example, I used to think my mother was selfish because she wanted to give me all these things and love me and care for me in ways that I didn't understand or want, right? As I got older, and I used to have resentment toward my mother. I don't anymore. My father's a different situation.
I'm talking about the permutation of parent that dotes on their child because they do it out of a selfish desire to be
I
like
think
that
that's
identity.
definitely not most parents, and there are parents that like that, but that's definitely not
Well, I
most
didn't say
parents.
most. I just said it was
Oh, okay.
growing to.
No, they exist, sure, and that might have been the case for you. But I'm saying, like, I don't know. I'm not inside your mom's head. I have no idea. It didn't feel aversive
It,
at the time, but the effect developed later in life. I don't. Yeah, I'm. Yeah, but anyway.
the
Uh,
reason why I said that was
yeah,
because it wasn't specifically for someone that was neurodivergent. Or
yeah,
that's why it probably didn't come to you.
yeah. That makes sense. Well, I got to end the stream, but one last thing. I didn't answer the thing with the MTN said. MTN. I don't have a bias because I'm literally just integrating those neurological aspects into the ideas that already exist within the psychodynamic process. It's all integrated in my mind. When you look at the behaviors, because with a lot of psychodynamic stuff, right, they're trying to figure out the reasons for why these behaviors developed, right? And there's so many theories. There's so many theories on schizoids. Some stuff contradicts. There's like all kinds of shit. It's a clusterfuck. And I think the reason it is a clusterfuck is because this neurological component is not being taken into consideration or being discussed as something that could be a primary core important component to why this develops. That's why it's so misunderstood. That's why they can't figure it out. That's why it's considered prognosis poor. That's why most psychologists don't want to take a schizoid on, much less other personality disorders. But a schizoid's like, I don't even know what to do this guy. Like, there's literally psychologists out there putting shit out like, oh, well, these people are just like, they're just going to be like this forever. There's nothing you can do about it. Fucking stupid.
I think when they say brain issues, I think they're talking about neurodivergency.
No, I don't have a bias toward it. It's that I believe I am neuro fucking divergent, and I believe, based on all my experiences with the fucking countless schizoids I've talked to at this point, and the stuff I've read that they say and do and explain themselves, like, it's a core component to what is happening, in my fucking opinion. I hate having to repeat that, but I always want to make sure that nobody comes in and they think I'm just like making all these like, this is a fact, this is a fact. No, this is not a fact. This is something that to me feels like it could be a fact, but I think it needs to be researched. We need the STEM people to research this because I think it's incredibly important. And a factor that if it's integrated into the idea, then there's a possibility we can start coming up with much better ways to heal a schizoid person.
Yeah, I guess it's on me for not respecting the "this is my opinion" aspect of it.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know you didn't respect it.
Well, you blatantly have said and have always said that this is your opinion. This is
I'm
what
not a
believe
scientist.
schizoid is.
I didn't verifiably
Right.
proof this. This is all like my experience. I'm like the most anecdotally experienced person anywhere regarding the
Well,
subject, but that's about it. I have a bunch
I'm
of
just trying.
qualitative data in my head. It's not
I'm
really
trying to
that
like
useful
be
on a STEM
like more
level.
confident than I believe.
Oh, well. All right, I gotta end this, but yes, I've even been
You want
talking
to go
to
another hour?
no, I've even been talking to some of the psychs I am in contact with about this subject, and I mean, even they're saying like, okay, yeah, like some of this stuff, like, yeah, a neurodivergent kid would be most susceptible to the situation. You want to know, and look,
It rubs me the wrong way because I don't want to
sorry,
alienate.
I'm
Like I
sorry, it
don't want
rubs
to
you the
say
wrong
that.
way. I'm
No,
sorry, it does.
it rubs me the wrong way because when I talk to certain people, I don't want to say this is what I'm confident in because that could alienate.
Okay, well then
a number of
don't be
people I'm
confident in
talking to.
that. Don't be confident. I'm not trying to alienate anyone. It's just what I'm
Okay,
seeing.
this is me exploring how that could, not be the thing, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Because
I
I'd
haven't
rather be
really.
more confident and say what it is than
You want
be.
to know what how I think you would get a neurotypical schizoid? And I've said this before, I think. Get to like autist parents that are aware of it and how they are, that don't know anything about how, like on an island, right? And then they give birth to a neurotypical child, by all, from what we understand what that it means, and then they raise that child in an autistic fashion
That's
and showing displays of love and understanding that make sense to them and don't make sense to that neurotypical child, and then that neurotypical child never has access to seeing the rest of the world and how it engages, and wouldn't see the people doing the things that feel intuitively right to them, right? And so then you would get a similar situation. And I said their school was on this island was full of other autistic kids, and they're the only neurotypical in this community, and they don't have access to the outside world even through the internet. Then yes, you would get a neurotypical schizoid.
The lack
Because
of
you-
emotional
it's-
attunement, I think, can be explained by a lot more than just divergent.
I mean, that's just my
non-neurodivergent.
position. I think the amount of emotional damage and the type of emotional damage that's occurring, and the kind of existential, like, I do not connect to humans. That level, I think, requires a very deep sort of disconnect from not just your parents, not just your brothers and sisters, not even just your your authority figures, but everything. Everything. Authority figures, institutions, parents, people that you were, especially this is what sucks too. A lot of like neurodivergent kids, like they'll say, like, I had really good friends when I was little because we did all these things together. We did all these activities together, right? And the activities was what they were connecting to with the friends, right? Because when you're kids, it's more about activities, right? A lot of the social stuff is kind of just happening in the background. They're learning it, so on and so forth, right? But the activities is what matters to that neurodivergent kid. And when they get older, and things like puberty and adolescence and interpersonal relationships of a more conventional nature start becoming the primary driving force for a lot of teenagers and stuff, that adolescent neurodivergent person is going to like feel completely left behind, alienated, and often ostracized, because they're going to be like, why do all my friends that we used to play these like video games together all the time, why do they not want to play video games anymore? Why do they want to go date? Why do they want to go party? Why do they want to go be with people and do all these things? Like, why don't they just want to do what we always did? It was so cool. I liked it. And then if you bring this up, they think you're weird, or they get bored of you because they're like, oh, all that stuff's like for kids, or all that stuff's like, no, that's nerds shit. And then you're like, what happened to all these people that I called friend? And they're gone. And you don't understand why. And then you think, why can't I do you attempt to do the things they do? And you can't emulate it, or you can mask, or you can mimic it, and it all feels bad and aversive and unintuitive. And then you can't do it because your choice is like, I don't want to stay with these people. They're doing all these things that don't make sense to me anymore. They don't feel like friends anymore, in my version of what that might have meant. That's something I definitely experience as well, right? And so that type of stuff is the level of sort of disconnect that I think has to happen to get like a schizoid. It has to be on a peer to even institution level. Why do my teachers make me do these things? Why do people seem to care about these things? Why do adults agree with each other around me about how important this is, and it just feels so weird? Is it just because I'm a kid? Oh, wait, all these kids grew up like I grew up, and these kids grew up, and now they still care. Now they care about these things the adults were talking about, right? That I didn't understand as a kid, but I chalked it up to being a kid. But it wasn't because I was a kid. It was because there's no mechanism for me to start really caring about it, because that's not how I work. That's how I function. Like I think it takes that level. And it's sort of what I'm saying. Like, because even like a kid that like I don't know, has like really bad invasive parents, all this sort of stuff, they could still like they'll still like they'll have all these problems, right? They'll be anxious. They'll have they might develop all kinds of issues and traits and disorders and all this sort of shit, but they'll still have like, those friends that they were connecting to and continue connecting to some degree, in those ways that made sense to them. And the worst part too, I think, for a lot of neurodivergent kids that lose their friends as these things happen, is they start questioning whether they were friends at all, because they start realizing, wait, why did they think I was friends with them? What does friends mean? Does it mean this stuff? I don't want this. I don't want friends. I thought I wanted friends. What happened? It's fucked.
I don't know. In my opinion, the inability to differentiate toxic connections learned from parents onto other people can still be like get them to an ultimatum point where they say I can't do anything because
Maybe.
of the invasiveness of my parents, right? So it's that they focus on, not that my friends reject me. It's this is too much. I can't have any relationship do that. This is now an ultimatum because of schizoid reasons.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I don't hear that. I I don't read that. I don't hear that. This person you're talking about, maybe they're just all hiding from me.
I mean, there's plenty of reason to suspect that these types of schizoids, the quote unquote quiet schizoids, as if they're not all quiet, but regardless, have the fact that they're
Why am I not
not
reading these
having all these
stories on?
neurodivergent problems mean they have more livelihood, quote unquote, success.
Shut up, active. Stop
And
being silly.
Don't need to like go to online Discord servers where to find help because they're getting by well enough to not think that they have a disorder.
Okay. I mean, I'm not gonna go another hour over this. I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, like, yeah, like I don't know. I guess I'm just not meeting them all. I'm not seeing. They're not. I'm not reading. They're not joining my server and talking about it. I guess. I don't know. They're not talking.
I mean,
about
I don't want to hear that. For
No.
example, I don't want to hear my parents.
Comments aren't being left. Emails aren't being sent to me that explain it like this.
I don't want to hear that some of the reasons why I became schizoid were because my parents weren't neurodivergent. What I want to hear is
No, if they were they could have been neurotypical and then aware of the things that you required, and then made that much of an effort to provide them.
Right. But that's my point, right? I want to hear
It's a knowledge
lack of emotional
issue.
attunement, regardless of neurodivergent, neurotypical.
Yeah.
Because that's what I can actually work with. It's not.
I can't tell you how many like schizoids I talk to that say, "No, I legitimately believe my mom loves me and cares about me. She's very much emotionally, and I just don't understand it because she wants to be loved the way she loves me, but the way she loves me doesn't seem right for me, and like the way I might or could love her wouldn't be enough for her. It wouldn't be what she wants."
But there are neurotypical people that understand and can attune, emotionally speaking, to neurodivergent people. So I don't like.
Yeah, they have a higher metacognition usually.
Yeah, I don't like the learned helplessness aspect that comes about when you say that this is the breeding ground, because I just don't.
It's not learned helplessness. It's literal conditions, environmental conditions.
Well, the learned helplessness of when you say
It's not even learned. It is helplessness. It's not learned helplessness. It is helplessness.
I was in a non-neurodivergent environment.
Oh.
That's why it's like that, and it was like that because my parents weren't neurodivergent. It's like
no, it wasn't just your parent. My parents, my peers,
way.
my the people I interacted with on average, my teachers, my authority figures.
But that's not
the way the people on the television, the
environment.
people on the
That's
internet.
An environment that lacked emotional attunement. That is a much better way to phrase it.
I don't agree. I mean, like there's an emotion. Yeah. They would be emotionally attuned if something was there to provide it. But there wasn't. It is not learned helplessness. It was literal helplessness.
Well, because I could be in a neurodivergent environment and still have a lack of emotional attunement. That's kind of my problem.
Okay. That might be the case, yeah. But I don't think that you need that component for the schizoid stuff to happen.
I think that's the very component that is the core of the issue.
You're not supposed to shut up, active. It's just that you just be walking in here talking about NPCs and simps and.
Is it the emotional?
Sorry,
like you can
just wasn't in the mood for it.
I don't want to take up your time.
I'm actually fucking exhausted. I'm done. Like my brain is done. Spoons are done.
Always do this another day.
Yeah, I know. I know you can go for fucking hours. I do not have that power.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, it's and you pay for it sometimes too. Probably exhaustion wise and things like that.
Can't do otherwise.
You burn out. I know you burn out. All right. Well, what is it? Yeah, that's a common thing, though, right? Autistic burnout. That's so common. It's like go, 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 go. The body. What is it again? The body. The mind is willing, but the body isn't, or the will is whatever. It's like that kind of situation.
The spirit's far stronger than the flesh.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
That's what happens to you a lot, I think. It's hard for you to hit the brakes, huh? Um. All right. There's an option to ban people. I'm not gonna ban you, active. Why would I ban you? You want to be banned? Like,
ban yourself.
yeah, ban yourself. What the fuck? Why are you putting the onus on me? If you want to be banned, go ban yourself. You haven't done anything that requires me to ban you. If you'd like
You
to
should
start,
ban yourself.
if you would
now.
like to start doing things like that, I can ban you, but you haven't. Sometimes you say some goofy shit and you get like angry or whatever. That's fine. It's fine. I don't care. But anyway. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy this, if you enjoyed the talk, I should have said this at the beginning because everyone half the people already left probably. But please support me on Patreon. Please support me on the service subscription. Please support me on PayPal. That stuff's like in my about me on the YouTube channel. And all that shit helps. This is not a money making venture, but any kind of donations and things are really helpful. They help pay for like stupid shit like that I need for this stuff or whatever. But I'll be honest, sometimes they just help with like my own mental health. Like I just can't like in my life, in my actual 40-hour a week job and everything, I can't really afford to keep up with some of my like things that make me feel calmer, right? That cost money. And I'm not just talking about alcohol, I'm talking about things like I don't know, like a book I want to read or a hobby type thing, right?
What's the latest snack?
Yeah, well,
that you
maybe
like?
it'll be a snack or something that I like, right?
Yeah.
My normal pay that I do as a job with my family, I can't really invest money into like any hobbies very much, or things that like chill me out and help. So when you guys do that, I put it toward things that are like practical for what I'm doing here. But sometimes, yeah, I'll just like I don't know, I'll get something on Steam that I find really cool and relaxing
Buy
and
his
stuff.
14th Miku statue.
Or I'll buy Miku. I'm not into Miku, but whatever. There is that cool Miku song that I like. But anyway, that stuff helps me, and it's yeah. I don't have like extra cash for that kind of shit in my regular life, so I really appreciate it, guys. I know it sounds stupid, but like, think about how it sounds like somebody else would be like, "What the fuck? You're spending his money on like Steam games and or like shit like that, right?" Um, but yeah, like I mean, think about how often schizoids in general use things like escapism and not necessarily to deny those problems and the things going on, but just to get some peace of mind, just to get like some of that energy back, just to get like stuff like that. So any of you that already do, I really appreciate it, and I try to be as transparent as I can about like what I'm doing with it. All right, guys, peace out, and as usual, when day is dark, always remember, happy day.